So for everyone who's been wondering about Grandpa and I forgot what you guys call her, I think Daisy. Well, they're back. Now, I don't know what's going on with anything to do with this fella. I have no idea. But what I do know is that these two have not been here in a month. They haven't. They have not been over here in a month. It's been Duke all by himself running this fence line. And now that Duke has been removed, legally removed, then suddenly we find these two back out and about. And on one hand, that makes me happy to know that these two are back out and about, because what I was afraid of, I was afraid that they were being pinned up in that tiny corral area over there. I wasn't sure, but to not be able to see them for so long had me worried. But no, they're back out and about and walking along, just kind of grazing at whatever they can find to eat. So that should hopefully answer any of those questions that you may have had about what happened to Grandpa and the little female. And here they are. Hey folks, Lester here, and thank you for joining me on today's 3 o'clock video. I'm going to drive out back and we're going to talk a little bit about the neighbor's horses next door. And I'm going to be candid, open, and honest in our discussion today. And I know that there's going to be some things that many people are not going to want to hear. Okay, well, I'm going to start talking from this area right here, because on the surveillance camera that we have from last Thursday, you'll see that about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Duke, the neighbor's horse, showed up in this area right through here. Our surveillance cameras, we have 4 that are all situated around the RV, and they face in 4 different directions. It did catch Duke right over here in this particular area on this back side of the fence. All of that was given to the authorities, friends. All of that footage was given to the authorities, and so they kind of had an idea of where Duke came in from, all right? So we had no concerns with anybody walking this fence line up front. There was no way Duke could have gotten through any of this over here, but he did come through the back fencing. So we've already talked about, and I showed you on video, on the live video the day that Duke was over here, the break in the fence that he created down the far fence line and how he got into this particular pasture. Now, I don't understand why people are having such a hard time understanding that. We have been called everything from liars. I'm not going to get into all the negativity, but bottom line is, Mr. Duke had to go through 3 fences to get over. I'll drive over now and show you how we have addressed our fences since then. The time, the energy, and the money that we've spent to try to patch up and repair our fences. I'm going to leave that open for right now because all of our cows, including Chucky Poo, are all down in the far corner. So what we do not have under video surveillance is anything out here behind the barn. Our cameras are not set up out here. I'll just drive over to as far down as we ran the new cattle panels. All right, this is a very important part of the fencing. Let me turn this off and I'll talk to you about why. Okay, so from this H-brace over here, going all the way down, not only is our fencing in tip-top and just wonderful shape, But even the neighbor's fencing over here, you see his corner post and all of his wire, it's not as strong of a fence as what we got, but there are in fact two very solid separating fences which give us a middle DMZ, a demilitarized zone, and that's what we've always called it. We've also talked about the fact that whenever I came by and we bought the property and I realized that there were other animals alongside our property, I wanted to have that DMZ because everybody knows that if any of your animals are able to touch noses, to sometimes smell or sniff on each other, then they're going to find more temptations than to push themselves through. All right? And so if you can have that separation, that 6, 8 to 10 foot of DMZ, as you call it, you can prevent a whole lot of issues. And so I come by and so my property line is actually here at the neighbor's fence. And I don't even know if the neighbor built that. It could have been the former owner. I have no idea. But where that post is at right there, that is my property line. But I literally gave up 10 foot of real estate and moved a second fence line 10 foot across to make sure we could create that space where bulls or horses or anything else could not be rubbing noses, fighting, and breaking through the fence. Okay, now let's talk about what the neighbor has not done. The neighbor, over time, as the neighbor's fence line begin to decline and things happen over time, the neighbor's cows or horses begin to find ways to push up and rub up against our fencing, and at some places here and there have found their way through into this DMZ area. And so once your cows or horses get into a DMZ area, now in fact you don't have two dividing fence lines, you only have one dividing fence line. But that defeats the entire purpose of all of this real estate here if it's not being utilized, or if it's not being used to keep animals out. So what I did not want to do is go by on this old fencing and try to redo it. I did not want to have to go down and cut all of these trees, even though I have every right in the world to do so. I did not want to go by and cut all of this tree down and pull all of these old posts up and build, in fact, two solid fences. I would have hoped that the neighbor would have come by and patched up that fencing to keep his animals on his side. Not come by and just forget about that old fencing. Instead, use this as our fence line, because this is not the property line. That over there is. And that has been explained to the neighbor multiple times. The property line is the old fence. So any animal going from here over on that side, or from there going to come to our side, the person's animal who's going through is the one who's culpable or at fault, meaning the owner is the one to be held responsible. So yes, every time, and it has happened 3 times that our animals, mostly Tex, one time, I think it was Jenny Lane, they have left our property and gone over. They've gone through the shabby fencing, made their way all the way over to the neighbor's property. And all 3 times, I contacted the neighbor and says, hey, my bull's over, or I got some cows over. I'll get them back. Letting him know that I'm over on your property. I'm grabbing my cows. I've always done that. So to say that we've not been neighborly and that we don't allow a little bit of gray area it's unfounded, and it's not true. And I will say, I'm going to address that first of all. That is absolutely not true. Very, very untrue. Now, because the neighbor refuses to address his fencing issues, I've decided to go ahead and do a little bit stronger fencing over on my side. So I know it looks horrible, and I take no pride in this whatsoever. But now, along with our barbed wire. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, along with our 5 strands of barbed wire, I've also come by and hung up these panels. We stapled them to our wooden post. We've zip tied them to our T-post. We've also zip tied them onto our existing wire. So it does not look pretty. And there's no one bragging about how beautiful this fencing is. But I will say this. This type of fencing is functional, and it's going to keep the bulls and the cows out. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but we also hoped it would have kept the horses out. We did all of this after we had the incident with Duke. Now, I'm going to say this again, and I hope that you hear me when I say this. If Duke would have never been able to come into the DMZ, if Duke would have never been able to come to the DMZ, he would have never come over into my pasture. He would not have. Once again, hear me when I say this, because some people are hard of hearing or they just refuse to understand. I'm going to zoom into this. If this neighbor would come by and patch and repair his fences, because as of right now, there is nothing. There is nothing. If the neighbor would come by and patch and repair his fences, then that horse of his, Duke, would have never got over onto my side. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to preach it. And if you cannot seem to find a way to accept it as fact, then more than likely you are that kind of a person. You are that kind of a neighbor. And you expect to put all the blame on somebody else and never want to take responsibility for yourself. That right there is what the police took pictures of. That right there is what the police took pictures of. And that right there. And that right there. Those are the things that the police came to photograph. Before Duke was legally removed, those are the things the police looked at. Now, once they noticed that Duke came right through that fencing, he found his way through my fencing. Because at that point, we did not have this. We only had the strands of barbed wire. And there are places where the barbed wire can be loosened out. Here's an example right here. Look at how loose the barbed wire is right here. But once again, this was not my animals over on his property. This was his wasp. This was his animals coming across to my side. So what do? I come by here and I stick that up. It's not pretty, but it's functional. Not pretty, but it's functional. And that keeps all of the animals, at least for now, out of the DMZ. Okay? Oh my holy. I know that you are heavily concerned with that poor horse. Jamie has talked about it. I've talked about it. And for some reason, you just cannot accept the fact that we finally took action and made a move. Been called every name in the book from so many people in the comments. And you just cannot seem to understand the fact that this horse came through 3 fences. Looky here. I got cows a-coming. And I left that gate wide ass open. Let me pause this for now, get over there and close the gate, and then we'll come back and continue our discussion. All right, so to answer, or to at least to address one of your questions, as Lester, how come you did not have that good, strong fencing up to begin with? If you knew that your cows were able to sometimes get through, if you knew his horses were sometimes able to come through, why did you not invest in that wiring a lot sooner? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, that wire is just stuck up there. It's just tacked up there. That is not a permanent solution. That is not permanent fencing. To do that kind of fencing the right way, you have to do it like this. This is how that works the right way. You have to put wooden posts into the ground. You have to run barbed wire on one side, your panels on the other, and a top and bottom board. Friends, maybe you don't realize the cost of materials, but just that stretch of wire, that 17 panels alone, cost me $400 just for the panels alone. And that's just with me tacking them up. All right, so to end up running a fence like this, all the way down that fence line, would be thousands, plural, thousands of dollars. Guys, we're not going to do that right now. We're not in a financial place to do that right now, okay? And so don't let that open up a whole new area of you being upset. Well, if you ain't making enough money, you can't even fence your animal. Hold on a minute. Our animals are right here. I have an intact bull who has not crossed over that fence this year. Hear me when I'm saying to you. Don't shut me off now because you don't like what I'm saying. I have an intact bull that would stick his ding-a-ling in a snotty tissue if he had it, who has chosen or not been able to get across that fencing this year. So I'm doing enough to maintain my animals. So every landowner, this goes to my dad, to Shirtless Jake, to Uncle Dan, to Kim, to Bree, to Jamie, to me, every one of us, and every one of you. If you can't find a way to maintain and contain your animals, then you shouldn't have animals. Period. You have to sometimes move along animals that you cannot keep contained. It's as simple as that. If you don't have the resources, or you don't have the manpower, or you don't have the know-how, or you don't have the finances to contain your animals, then you don't deserve them. They deserve better than you. Which leads me to why I think so many people are very upset about Duke. Because if I don't get the email after the email of people saying to me, here we go, I'm going to paraphrase, because it doesn't matter how you say it, you're still saying it. You're saying, Lester, all you did was sent that horse off. Legally or not, you sent that horse off to be euthanized. All you did was sent that horse off to be euthanized. And I remind you of something. I stood right here. Wherever we stood, in camera view, with me recording from my pocket with my phone on audio record, me offering to give that fella $1,000, and me taking his horses to a rescue who would have loved to have had them. I had the horses already in a trailer. I had one in that trailer, and I had the other horse in our horse trailer. And I told that man, I says, hey, bud, I have your horses in a trailer. I'm taking them to a rescue. And that man, if he didn't find a way to drive himself all the way from Houston over here in time to stop me and demand that his horses be released, or else. So, many of you are going to say, you should have not even called the neighbor. Guys, I did the right thing morally and neighborly. Some of y'all need to check yourself. Seriously, some of y'all need to check yourself and ask yourself this real simple question. Who are you? And what kind of person are you? I did the right thing. I did the right thing time and time and time again. If I did anything wrong, it was letting it go on for as long as it did. If I made any mistake in all of this, it was allowing this riffraff to go on for as long as it did. And if that horse did end up going somewhere that's going to eventually have him euthanized, I am very sorry. But you don't put that on me. Shame on you for putting that on me. That horse has caused more damages, not to just the property, but to physical pain of our horses. Possibly raping poor Gemma, who's way too young to have ever had to experience all of that. Chasing, the last time they chased Gemma all over the darn place, putting her at life and just give me a break. This is my happy place, Lester. I don't like when you're upset. I don't want to be upset neither. This is also my happy place. This is the JL Ranch, an extension of I'm a Survivor Sanctuary, where animals like Chucky Poo and Roman and Rita and so many others are able to come and find peace, a forever home. They should not be tormented. They should not walk around with bloody noses. They should not risk kicking and biting and putting their holes through the side of a metal barn. And so I think that many of you should check yourself. And if you still come back with hate in your heart, or whatever you want to call it, maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're the same as that guy over there. And guess what? Maybe we see the world very differently. So, bottom line is, the way that I see the world and the way that I translate what happened here with Duke last week is real simple. I did it by the law, the book. I did everything right. I have everything documented with video evidence, along with the paper trail of reports after report after report. Okay? So, if you're upset with me about what may or may not have happened to Duke, or what may or may not happen to Duke, you're mad at the wrong person. Because what I think that you want me to do is the same thing that other people have suggested I should have done. Found a way to take Duke out of my pastures, and found a way to get him back where he came from, and found a way to reinforce my fencing. And that means that you have no idea what you're saying. Seriously, that means you have no idea what you're saying and how difficult, well, first of all, how many times we've done that exact same thing. And I'm just tired of dealing with it. I'm tired of talking about it. Bottom line is, hear me, maybe read my lips when I say, Duke is no longer here. And I can almost guarantee you, I can almost promise you that Duke will never be back. And you know how I know that? If this neighbor can't find the time or the money or the means or the know-how or whatever it takes to patch and repair his fences, then there ain't no way he's going to go to court and get that horse back. There ain't no way. There ain't no way. No way. He would never do that, because he already knows he can't contain these. Now, here's what I worry about. You ready? We noticed this morning that Grandpa and Daisy are back out. More than likely he did that just to show me that maybe get the last laugh. But let me tell you what's going to happen. Over time, his grandpa will come into that DMZ. At some point, his grandpa will make his way through 2 fences and come right up behind my pasture here. And at some point, that grandpa will also come over here and make his way into our horse pasture. And on that day, when it happens, and it will happen, I will also grab my surveillance camera footage, and I will also put my horses away. God forbid something bad happened to them. And I will also make that phone call, and we'll also say our goodbyes to Mr. Grandpa as they load him up and take him out of here. And you know what's going to happen then? Then it's going to be sad, because all you're going to have over here all alone is that sweet little Daisy who's done nothing wrong. So you should really think about whose finger of blame you want to keep pointing at. So I am tired of talking about the subject. From this day on, we're going to move forward. It's been almost a week, and you've harassed Jamie. You have harassed me. You have harassed creators on other channels who have nothing to do with this and have absolutely zero knowledge of any of all of this, just because you cannot find the answers you're looking for, or you want to find someone else to join you in your fight or plight to shake your finger at Lester. Lester's about tired of it. thank you, God, that our horses are fine. Rita and Gemma are doing great. Roman is doing wonderful. He just now went to the stables over there. His stables, his security, his home. And we will keep a very vigilant eye out on Grandpa now that he's loose again. And hoping to God that he does not do what we imagine he's going to eventually do. All right? Now, sorry if you're upset. Sorry if you think that I'm talking down to you. But I'm tired. I'm tired of all that, okay? Our bulls are in their bullpen. And we made sure to spend the time, the money, and the energy to make it a place where they're not getting in and out of. To go off and terrorize other people's cows. Our horses are in their horse pasture. And we've made it a point to make it where they cannot be breaking out and running free up and down the highway and going places they shouldn't be going, getting themselves into trouble. And our cows, including our intact herd bull, is still and has been for the last 6 months unable to get through our fencing. So we're doing our job. Now it's time that other people step up and do theirs. And if you can't understand that, then it's unlikely that you'll ever understand how it really works in the real world when it comes to animals and taking care of them and responsibilities. All right, don't mean to upset you all, but sometimes what people need are the hard facts.
Don't let your troubles fester. Come watch Longhorn Lester.
Yeah, something like that.